What's up, everyone? This is BigPowner, and today we're going to be making an absolutely insane blade vortex helm. Specifically, this is for a fire blade vortex. You could make some changes to it and do it for any blade vortex build. Obviously, your base is going to be different, and I'll start off by explaining the base and the choice for it, and the reason why, if you're not doing a fire blade vortex, it's not necessarily going to be good for you. Um, so yeah, we'll start off with that. So the base that I've selected is the Blizzard Crown. The reason why we've gone with the Blizzard Crown is because we wind up using Avatar of Fire to convert 50% of physical cold lightning into fire damage, and then we deal no non-fire damage. So basically, the implicit on this is all benefits, no losses. So we get 42.5 to 64 fire damage because of Avatar of Fire. And the downside to this is your hits treat cold resistance 10% higher. Since we're not hitting with cold, this doesn't negatively affect us in any way. This base is just 100% a win for the Fire Blade Vortex. So this is absolutely best type base. You can buy these, not that expensive for this base. Just the amount you'd probably spend in Perfect Fossils to get 30%, and then having white sockets is cool. This would be my recommendation if you're going to do this build. I can't remember exactly. It was like under an exalt to pick up one of these bases. Even if it was a couple exalts, I still would have bought it. Anyways, so we got our base down. We're going to go ahead and look at PoEDB, and I'm going to explain to you the different things that we're going to be looking for on this base. As you can see, the Keeper base is already Warlords. The main thing that we're probably going to want to start with is this maximum power charge. Whether you want to elevate this or not is kind of going to be your choice. The 10% chance that if you would gain a power charge, you instead gain maximum number of power charge. This can be cool because, you know, when you start, the first time you get a power charge, you have a chance to get it. It's 1 out of 10 chance, depending on how many power charges you have. I think I'm going to have 7 power charges. So it's an advantage. I'm actually not going to go for it just because how hard the power charges to roll. I'm going to be getting power charges based off of my crit. You're hitting 7.5 times on each enemy per second. So I'm going to build up my power charges really quickly anyways. So to me, it's just not worth it to elevate this mod. If you do want to elevate this mod is going to have to be elevated before you start the craft. The reason why is because if you slam them together and then you try to elevate this as your third elevation, because obviously if you're elevating this, there's other stuff that's better. You're probably going to be doing a triple elevation. You're going to want to start with this first. The reason why is because once you slam the item together, if you wind up removing this, it's basically gone. You're not going to have any way to get it back on there because it doesn't have a tag that we can add through harvest. Luckily, the suffixes are going to be really easy, so that is a win. The other thing that we're going to be going for on the top here, we have 2 things that we can go for, and this would be like if you're doing cold or something else, you would just select something different. Since obviously we benefit from converting physical and number percent physical as extra fire, and then obviously we benefit from fire damage to spells because Blade Vortex, although it says blade, it is a spell. It benefits from both physical and fire. So we're going to elevate one of these because it's a prefix. These are the 2 prefixes that we're going to want. We're going to want the power charge, and we're going to want either physical damage to spells or fire damage to spells. They're so close that honestly either one is good to start with. You know, in really high number percent physical is extra fire, the physical is going to win. So if you want absolute best, then go for the elevated physical. Once we get the item slammed together, if you wanted to just go all out damage on this, if you have a top that's open, like if you had the physical not on there yet, you could re-roll physical for physical till you hit till you hit the physical. You could have triple damage mods. Well, power charge 2 damages on the top, and then there's an option to go all damage on the bottom also. I'm not sure if I'm going to go all damage. I need to be picking up life somewhere. I may though. We'll see. But that's kind of going to be a choice of like what your preferences, what your needs are. If you just want to go for the absolute craziest damage, you're probably going to want the 3 damage slots, power charge, fire to spells, physical to spells. If you were cold, you would do the exact same thing. You would go physical and cold. So the way that we're going to elevate one of these mods is we're going to roll both of the tier 1s on here onto a destroyer base. This is something, the reason why I made my destroy base, the one that I bought, is because then I was able to just find one and buy it instead of trying to roll two tier one spell mods on it. You could do it if bases got really expensive, but I paid like 5 chaos for this base, so that was just really easy, which made it no choice for me to just take that Blizzard Crown, add the Warlord's influence, and then roll the power charge onto it. Just made it the easiest way to do it. That's my personal preference. I'd rather roll for the one mod that's hard to hit than try to roll 2 mods together, because those 2 mods that are together then also have to be isolated. This one has to be isolated also, but obviously I used the alteration method, so before I regal it, the only way that I have to wind up dealing with that is if I miss the regal and it winds up giving me another influence modifier. But if you're trying to elevate that, then obviously you're going to want to have the second one on there. So anyways, you can pick which way you want to go, whether you want to add the influence to your keeper helm, well, which influence you want to add, how you want to go about it. But this is how I'm going about it because it was the cheapest, fastest way for me to get this set up. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to do with it. Let me bring this back up. What we're going to do with it once we slam these together. Obviously, I'm going to elevate. I'm going to get elevated fire or elevated physical. Win-win situation there. I'm not going to wind up wasting a Maven's Orb. I'm not going to have to wind up selling a base unless you're in that position where you're like, I absolutely want the very, very best, even if it's just a minuscule gain in damage. I want the best of the best. I'm going to go for the physical. If you're not in that category where you want that minuscule increase, then it's a win-win situation once you get it to this point. Once we slam it together, we're going to obviously have 2 prefixes that we want. Hopefully we don't get something crappy that's hard to remove. Crappy hard to remove would be like if we got this, like, well, actually no, because we can remove this. This one can be removed either way. Elemental damage. This would kind of just be like, I'd probably just leave it, just because it's useful for the build. I'd just be like, oh, it's another influence modifier that I randomly got. If I got Warcry skills, that would kind of suck because there's not really any way, well, there is no way to remove it. As far as the Warlords, all this stuff, and the hunters, all the stuff on the hunters, we're going to be able to guaranteed remove because they're all tagged with if I get chaos damage to spells, I'm going to guarantee to be able to remove that because it's chaos. If I get lightning, I can remove that. I could leave it to get 50% of it, but I don't know. The physical is nice because it gives us cutting it down by 50%. I think I'd rather have life there. That would kind of be a choice for you. It does add something to it because of our notable, but it would wind up even being on a tier 1 with this. It would be like tier 1 would be like 10 to 14 on the bottom, 20 to 24, and I think I'd rather have a high HP roll or something else there. So all of the hunter ones we can guaranteed remove, so that's nice. Okay, we covered Warlord prefixes. There are like some things that could wind up being annoying in our prefixes here. We have physical damage to spells. If we wind up augmenting the physical damage to spells and we wind up hitting this reflex, then that's going to be an issue. Obviously, if we augment the fire, that's not going to be an issue because we can just remove physical. So we'll hope we won't get that. Obviously, minions, rarity of items, those are both those are both big issues because we have no way to remove them. You would have to decide whether you want to risk the item to remove that. Those are the fail. Those are the fail rolls. I'm pointing these out because you could wind up getting them. Enough people do it. Someone's going to get it. The cool thing about these ones that are our regular ones is we can do remove non-influence, add influence to fix it. This kind of gives us another one of those like random rolls. So we could wind up coming back to down here. That could wind up, we could wind up getting double duds and wind up hitting the war cry skills or, something else we don't want that we're then going to still have to remove. But at least it's a way to get rid of one of those things without risking ruining one of your items. I would definitely suggest that when you've invested this much on putting an item together. And if you wind up just a null orbing and you miss, and you remove your power charge or you remove your elevated mod, you've basically just made it so that that base not only doesn't have that mod and you have to start over, but that base is kind of wasted because you're not going to be able to have the ideal setup on it because the slamming together is what makes it so that we can have two mods that are hard to get. If we take and then we re-roll the power charge, if we lost that, then we have to put on physical and fire, and then we have to risk it again with the elevated modifier to get elevated. And then at that point, if it takes the power charge again, then we have to wipe off the elevated again and start over. So that's a really, really bad situation. I would definitely go for remove non-influence, add influence. If you got the war cry skill and you really hated it, then and you'd rather risk 2 out of 3 having to start the item over, then that's on you. But this is the only one that we can't do anything about really. So that's pretty nice. Or the elemental damage, but like I said, I mean, I'd kind of just be like, okay, it's an influence modifier and it's useful for the build. I just keep it. Okay, so what we're gonna do with the suffixes. Suffixes, we have several cool things. Specifically for the fire build, the thing is if you're going for a different one, you're not going to be able to do warlords, or you're not going to be able to have the negative resistance. You luck out if you're doing chaos, because you can still do negative resistance to chaos from the hunter base, but you're going to have to change up what your craft is if you're going cold, because obviously you need redeemer. There's other good stuff on here that you could go for, like reduced mana reservation or something like that. That would be something you'd have to start off. So it's going to be a different craft if you're not going for the fire, or you're just going to have to skip the negative resistance. But there's still a lot of other good things on here. We're going to go for the global critical strike multiplier. The cool thing is once we've slammed these two things together and we've gotten our top set up, we can go ahead and add, assuming you're making the fire, we can add the fire guaranteed. We just need to augment 2 fires because there's just the fire resistance and the negative fire to nearby enemies. And then critical, the multiplier, the only thing that we can get with augment critical is the multiplier. So there might be some re-rolling there because to get the tier 1, obviously. But once you have those 2 things on, which you can guaranteed put on, if you wind up in a bad situation where the stuff on the bottom's hard to remove, or you just got a bunch of duds, do reforge, keep prefixes, and re-roll the suffixes. You might get lucky and hit something good, or it might make it easier for you to just wipe it. If everything on it's bad and you have an open slot, you can craft on prefixes cannot be changed, which protects your prefixes, and then you can scour it, which will remove your suffixes. But if you're doing the fire and you put these 2 things on, you can once they're isolated, what you would do to get the negative fire resistance on, you would take and you'd augment fire once. You'd probably get fire resistance. If you got the negative to nearby enemies, that would be really cool. But more than likely, you're going to wind up getting this fire resistance because it's an 8,000 chance. The lower it is, the harder it is to get. This is a 250. So more than likely, your first fire augment, you're going to get a fire resistance. Leave that fire resistance. You're going to augment fire again, which is going to guaranteed put the negative fire resistance to nearby enemies. So you'll have that on. Then all you need to do is augment the critical. Then you can remove resistance. A good way to do this, you can do the resistance swap. This is if you want to elevate. At this point, if you have these 3 things, if your bottom is negative fire resistance, critical strike multiplier and a resistance, you could just re-roll the resistance to whatever resistance you want. Or you could take and remove the resistance safely by, we have no lightning mods on there that we want to keep. You just do change resistance. You change it from fire to lightning or fire to cold. And then you just do a remove lightning, remove cold, and then you have the open slot and you can do whatever you want with it. Whether you want to craft onto it, which you could craft something there, or whatever you want to do. I'm probably going to wind up switching the resistance to lightning and leaving it because I actually need lightning on that slot. But that's what I'm going to wind up doing. The other thing that you could do, which would be really cool, this is what I might do once I get my resistances fixed, is we have shocking conflicts here. Right here, it's got the lightning tag. So after I use that fire resistance, then I could take and re-roll it to lightning, and then I could do remove lightning, add lightning till I hit shocking conflicts. Shocking conflicts is really, really strong. The reason why it's really strong is because the way that shocking the way that shock works as you have a min shock, which is super low increase to damage, and then it goes up to a 50% increase to damage, like actual 50% increase. If you had 10 million damage and you hit them with a max shock, then it increases the damage they take by 50%. They now, instead of taking 10 million, they take 15 million damage. So shock is really, really strong. Since it's only up for 3 of 8 seconds, it sounds like it wouldn't be as good. You'd think I divide 3 by 8 and then, times that by the 50%, and then that's my damage increase. It's not, because we're hitting 7.5 times per second, so we can estimate that close to when it's going down, we're going to have recently applied a shock. Shock has a duration. Your duration can be increased, but basically the shock duration from the time that it goes up, so like say I'm engaging a boss, once it goes up, the shock is hardly down at all because it's up for 3 of 8 seconds, so it's only down for 5. I believe the base duration of shock is, I don't want to say something wrong, but base duration of shock is 2 seconds, which then gets increased. So minimum of 5 out of 8 seconds basically up from once it's been up. Like, and mainly you're going to need something like that against like big targets like a boss or something like that. So it's a massive damage increase. You're talking about like 25, we'll call it, which it's more because 5 over 8. We'll call it half of what that 50% max shock would be, which would be 25% increased damage over time. So why am I counting it as a max shock? So the way that shock works, or the way that any elemental ailment works, is the severity of the hit is what determines the scale of how much it affects, whether that be chill, ignite, shock. With ignite, the scale of it determines how much fire damage it's going to be doing over time. With chill, it's how much it reduces their action speed. With shock, it's how much damage increase that they take. So the reason why I say that it's going to be able to max shock, assuming that you're geared and stuff like that, is because what shocking conflicts does is it changes all of your of any damage to count towards the shock as lightning damage. So this is really cool because each enemy has a threshold where they have to take a certain percentage of their health as damage in the hit, and if they take that much, then it max shocks them. So to give you an idea, like my build's still being worked on. Right now its average hits 2 million, so that would be close to a max shock, but as you shock it, it's going to wind up actually passing what like after the initial shock, then they're going to be taking increased damage. It's going to bump up the damage, and the shock will elevate. So even right now in an unfinished build, I don't have clusters in, I've got 5 empty jewel slots. I'm already reaching that place where I'd be max shocking Uber Elder. So very realistic to hit a max shock on that. Very strong stat if you want more damage on this helm. So that is something that you could think about. Like I said, once I get my resistances set up, this is probably something that I'll go for. You do have to realize that the way that we're going to have to put this on is by doing remove lightning, add lightning, because it's lightning tagged. It'll be safe for us to re-roll it, but Success rate is going to be based on the lightning chance here, which we have an 8,000 versus 500. So we've got a 1 in 17 chance. So you might want to consider that before you try to do that. It is a 1 in 17 chance, so expect to roll 17 times before you hit it. You might get lucky, or you might get unlucky, and it might take you more than 17. So that is something that you want to keep in mind. I'm just throwing out all of the possibilities for this helm so that you can customize it and make it how it is that you want. I think I've pretty much covered everything. So we're going to just go ahead and make the helm. So here I've got my destroyer base. I've got the tier 1, the 2 tier 1 influence hunter mods. Either one of them is going to, well, one of them is going to come out as elevated, and I'm going to wind up keeping it regardless of what it is. I've already explained fire and physical are both useful. So we're going to Maven Orb this. I got fire damage spells. It is not the best one, but there is one advantage to it. If I wind up getting that physical in my prefixes, I'm going to be able to remove it. So that's a little added bonus. And like I said, there's not a huge difference in the two. So now we're going to awaken these, and the only things that are going to be guaranteed to stay on here are going to be one influence modifier from each item. I had a few people ask me about how the Awakener's Orbs work, so once again, I'm going to explain it. The Awakener's Orb is going to take 2 influence items and combine them. You only want to have the one influence modifier on it that you want, because if you have more than one, it's going to randomly select. So like if I had some other random modifier on this, it could wind up selecting the bad modifier, and then I would have slammed them together and my item would suck. So we don't want that to happen. So you need to have just the influence modifier you want on each item. If you're not sure, check POADB. It's pretty simple though. Like this is a hunter's base. It says elevated hunters. If it wasn't elevated, it wouldn't say elevated, but it would say hunters. This one, the power charge, it says warlords. It's going to give you that description. If you don't have that description, you're going to go into options, setting, user interface. You're going to scroll down here, and you're going to go to advanced mod descriptions and just check that box, and then it will give you those advanced mod descriptions. So using Awakener's Orb, one base is going to be kept, one's going to be eaten. You can basically, that's how I think about it. This one's going to get eaten because I'm going to click it first. This one's going to be kept because I'm going to be applying the one that the orb ate to it. You can also read the orb, destroys an item, applying its influence to another item of the same class. The second item is reforged, keeper item. That's what it means by that. As a rare item with both influence types and new modifiers. So let's go ahead and eat it and apply it. And there we go. So this winds up not being a bad setup from the start. It's got a life modifier, life defense. So I can work with that. The bottom has one open suffix, so it's real easy for me to craft on. Do not prefixes cannot be changed. 2 exalts, and then I just scour orbit. That'll clear my bottom. Augment 2 fires. That'll give me fire resistance, negative fire to nearby enemies, and then I'll do augment crit. And then at that point, I'll have the negative fire resistance and the multi. If I want to elevate, I just elevate with prefixes cannot be changed. You have to have prefixes cannot be changed so that you don't wind up taking one of your prefixes. The prefixes we don't want to be messing with at this point. The only way that I would want to mess with my prefixes is if I remove that life and I augment on the physical, and then I could reroll that physical to get tier 1. That would be something that I could do because I'm going to have no other physical modifiers on there. I could just reroll that till I have tier 1 physical damage to spells if I want to go all offensive. But make sure if you're going to Maven the bottom, make sure that the top is protected with prefixes cannot be changed. So like if you're going to go ahead to do that, obviously I can't do that now because I don't have a ton of crafts to do it, and we don't even know if I'd be successful, blah, blah, blah. The video is already 25 minutes. But I'm going to explain to you how to do it. If you want to elevate the bottom, you would just clear the bottom, augment 2 fires, which would First one's probably going to be resistance. If you hit the negative fire resistance to nearby enemies on the first one, then you don't need to augment another fire. It's just going to create more work for you. So then you have the negative fire resistance, then you're just going to augment your critical, the multiplier. It's the only critical stat. You're just going to re-roll that till you have tier 1. You have to make sure that it's tier 1, because if you elevate it and it's not tier 1, it just say it's tier rank 3, it'll just take it from rank 3 to rank 2, which is a really bad way to be leveling up the rank of a skill. Paying 8, I think I paid 8.5 exalts. That would be a really bad way to rank up that skill, when you could just do remove crit, add crit till it's tier 1. Anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. If you're not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this content, hit the like button, or share it if you got some friends that might like it. Thanks for watching. Peace out.